paper. The project is called Don't Take No for an Answer, and it's an experiment with actual organ donor registrations. What I'm going to do is tell you a little bit about organ donation, why we're interested in it, why we're interested in particular in how we ask people to register as organ donors. You may know this, the waiting list for organs in the US is large and it's continually growing. So as of a couple days ago, we were at 124,000 people on a waiting list for an organ transplant. The list, I said, is growing. 60,000 people were added to the list in 2013, the last year for which there's complete data. These people who are on these waiting lists are waiting for a donor organ. In the same year of 2013, there were just about 14,000 organ donors. And organ donors come in two flavors. They're either living donors. These are people who give an organ while alive, usually a kidney. As you probably know, we're in a room of health folks. So you can donate a kidney and live a healthy life with just one. And there were about 6,000 people who did that in 2013. The remaining donors, just over 8,000, are deceased donors. Deceased donors agree to have their organs donated after their death, or that consent to donate those organs is made by next of kin. And while they make up the majority of donors, they make up the vast majority of transplants for the obvious reason that a living donor can give one kidney or maybe part of a liver, but a deceased donor can give both kidneys, liver, heart, lungs, intestines, and whole host of organs. So in 2013, about 80% of donated organs came from deceased donors. I want to point out something, which is that the waiting list, while it's growing every year, does not grow by the difference between the 58,000 people that were added and minus the almost 29,000 who received a transplant, because people come off the list, the waiting list, not just because they got an organ, but also for sort of the bad reasons of dying or being too sick to transplant. This is a major problem in the US. Other countries have similar waiting lists in the sense that they're large and growing. We think there's an opportunity with deceased donors, not just because they're the majority of donors and the vast majority of transplants, but also because the registration rate of people who agree in advance of their death to be an organ donor is only 48% as of the last time it was measured. And in fact, I think 48% might be a high estimate. Basically what they do to calculate this number is count the number of people who are registered, who have ever registered as an organ donor, divide by the number of people who are of age, 18 or older, in US states, and I don't think that they're cleaning the data appropriately for people coming off the list, say because they died or because they changed their mind. So there's going to be lots of people who have not consented to organ donation. But that's only one of the ways in which we can get organs from people who've died. So there's two ways that individuals become deceased donors. This is assuming they die in a way that makes the organs available for transplant, so otherwise healthy, often brain dead, is their heart is still beating, the organs are getting the blood that they need, but they're dead, and so the organs can be transplanted. The way that they become deceased donors is either through State Department of Motor Vehicles, where they register, and when we say that 48% of individuals are registered, we mean they're registered at a Department of Motor Vehicles. Because if you go to Pennsylvania, DMV, you get a license, you'll get asked if you want to be an organ donor, you say yes, we count you as registered. We also get deceased donor organs, as I mentioned before, by consent of next of kin. So even people who are not registered, the transplant doctors can go to the next of kin and say, we're sorry for this tragedy, let's try to find a silver lining, I want to talk to you about organ donation. Right? And in practice, they also will ask the people who are registered, the next of kin of registered donors, even though sort of legally they don't have to, they'll still ask those next of kin, but it's a different conversation. It's so-and-so was an organ donor, this is what's going to happen as we start the process for organ donation. So what do we do in our experiment? Well, I said it's an experiment with actual organ donor registration. We're going to have subjects recruited into the laboratory, and unlike most experimental studies, we're going to require them to bring special identification. They're going to be told they need a Massachusetts ID card. This took place at Harvard. Either a license, a learner's permit, or a state ID. And then they're told they're going to need the last 4 digits of their social security number. They're not told that the experiment is about organ donation. Then they show up. Once they're there with those credentials, we say, what you're going to do in this study is you're going to log into the Massachusetts Organ and Tissue Donor Registry. We're going to give you the opportunity to change your organ and tissue donor status. So when you log in, we'll see what you are, you'll see what you are, and you can change that status. And then you're going to take a survey. So if you were to go to the Massachusetts Organ and Tissue Donor Registry, not part of our experiment, but just on your own, this is the login page that you'd see. So license ID number is there, your first and last name, date of birth, social security number, and email. When you come and participate in our study, you're going to go to the same page, but you're going to do it through a front end that we built. This is what it looks like, stripped of all the other links and identifying information, but it asks for the same information and has the same disclaimer. All right, and we're going to build this front end so that we can manipulate the way in which individuals are asked to register as an organ donor in a setting where their registration decisions are actually implemented in real time on the state registry. All right, so the way to think about this is the screen they see, this screen is running in the background, and when they put information in here, it populates the other screen, and any decisions they make are implemented in the real registry. All right, so how we build this opportunity to change the structure of the question. How do we do it? Well, it's a 2x2 design, and the one way in which we change the organ donor registration question is we frame the request either as an opt-in or as a yes/no question. All right, so I'm going to show you that in a second, but first I want to tell you why we did this. So we're interested in whether we ask the organ donation question as an opt-in or yes/no. Opt-in is when people are given the option to join the registry by checking a box, and leaving it blank is essentially saying, I don't want to join the registry. We're going to compare that to a yes/no frame where individuals have to choose either yes or no to the question about joining the registry, and if they try to continue with the experiment without selecting one of them, then they get an error message that says, please choose one of these options to continue. Why are we interested in this variation? Because yes/no frame is sort of assumed to increase registration rates, or assumed by people in this space, and I think sort of generally by behavioral economists. The UK and a bunch of US states have recently switched to yes/no frame questions. And we did a survey of all sorts of, across the country, different organ donation registration questions at the DMV, so either on forms or when people go into the offices. And the vast majority of states ask the question in a yes/no frame. So, but it has not been empirically tested, so we wanted to do that. To give you a sense of what these changes look like, this is the change in California. This is question 7 on the registration, the license registration form before July 1st, 2011. There's 2 boxes here, but it's actually not a yes/no. There's 2 opt-in questions. One is yes, I want to be an organ and tissue donor. The other one allows you to opt in to donate $2 to promote organ and tissue donation. They changed to a yes/no frame, so this is what question 7 looked like after July 1st. Now there's 2 options for the organ donor registry question. It's yes, add my name to the donor registry, or I do not wish to register at this time. And if one of those 2 options is not selected when you hand in the form, the DMV officer can say, excuse me, you haven't answered question 7. So this is one of the, so we want to evaluate this, the way in which we ask the question, see if we can use that to change behavior in the predicted way. We're also going to do a different variation. We're going to, in our 2x2, we're going to show a list of organs that will be donated after death or not. All right, so if you log into the Massachusetts registry through their front end, this is the screen that you see. In our experiment, you're going to see one of 4 screens. You're either going to see the opt-in question frame without the list of organs, so this is the control question with an opt-in. You're either going to see that opt-in or you're going to see a yes/no question. And the message is the same. Yes, question?
Did you intentionally not do the opt-out?
So I'm not going to have time to talk about opt-out. Opt-out is legally infeasible in the US to actually implement in the way that we want to implement it. And while it drastically increases rates in other countries, for example, in Europe, it's not always the case that those organ recovery rates are higher. So the US has the second highest organ recovery rate per capita, and we have an opt-in question. But there's lots of detailed reasons for that, which I'm happy to talk about offline. So we do the same variation of the opt-in versus yes-no with the list. Okay, this is a list of organs that you would potentially donate as an organ donor. All right, our subject pool, 42% are already donors, very close to the Massachusetts average, which rose from 44 to 48% over the course of the study. So we don't think we're getting people who are disproportionately favor or disfavor organ donation. What does that mean? That means the rest, about 58% of subjects, are non-donors. And in Massachusetts, you're always asked about organ donation at the DMV. So the fact that they come in with one of these forms means they were asked at some point and did not say yes. All right, so what are the results from the study? So I'm going to show you, by the 4 conditions, the percentage of people who leave the study as organ donors. First, I'll show, as registered organ donors. First, I'll show you for the guys who originally were donors, that is, they were donors when they came in. And everybody who was a donor when they started the study stays a donor in the study. So 2 out of the 156 people removed themselves from the registry. The other 154 stay donors. What about the guys who come in and they're not donors when they show up? Do any of them join the registry? I'm going to show you first the opt-in frame question. And there we do get a bunch of people who say, yes, I want to join the registry. All right, it's slightly higher in the list condition, but it's positive in both. Now what about the yes-no frame, this question frame that lots of states have been switching to, the vast majority of states use? How does that compare in converting these people who come in as non-donors? It does not do better. In fact, we can say that with some statistical confidence that it's not doing better than opt-in. We can't say that it's doing worse. And again, the list is slightly better than control. So this was a little bit surprising to us, given that this is sort of what states have been gravitating to. But it leads us to the title of the talk for 2 reasons. One is, the title of the talk is Don't Take No for the Answer. One way of saying don't take no for an answer is, don't take no for an answer. We've asked these people before. They said that they didn't want to be organ donors. When we asked them in Massachusetts DMV, they come into our study, and across all the treatments, the initial non-donors, we're getting 29% of them to say yes, they'll become a donor in our study. All right, so just because they've failed to say yes once or said no once, we should still ask them again. There's a second reason that we say don't take no for an answer, is that having this no option on the question does not appear to raise the registration rates. So this is surprising to us. We wanted to, I showed you the screens from California. We wanted to see if doing an empirical analysis of California would match the results that we found in the controlled experiment. So what I'm going to show you is quarterly data from California in the 3 quarters leading up to their change in registration question and the 3 quarters after. Okay? I'm going to also show you results, the same registration rate data at a quarterly level from 25 states in the District of Columbia that also had quarterly data available, but did not change the way the question was asked in this 6 quarters. So here's the California data. This is the registration rate as a percentage of the Q2 2011 rate. So this is 100% for California. And so you see it sort of increasing. This is the point where they changed the wording of the question. Right? And now they're doing a little bit worse. These are millions and millions of people coming into the DMV. Right? So this is a significant drop. It looks even worse when we throw in the other states as a control group. Sort of makes it look like there's a bit of a secular trend upwards over time that California is losing out on in addition to its own decrease in rates. All right, so let me tell you the one other, we did a follow-on study that sort of was one of the motivations to do the initial study to begin with. And the follow-on study is about the next of kin decision. So I told you that if we don't get you to say yes at the DMV, we can still ask your next of kin about whether they'd like to donate organs on your behalf. And so one concern with how we ask the question at the DMV is it might influence the way in which your next of kin decide about whether to donate your organs when you are not registered. So what do we do in our follow-on study? We survey 803 subjects on Mechanical Turk. They read a vignette about a hypothetical individual who has died. So the MTurk study, unlike the study on organ donor registrations, is hypothetical. And what the subjects are told is that the next of kin was asked about organ donation, and all they know about what the deceased wanted was that they saw this screen, or the screen with the yes/no question, and that the next of kin knows that the deceased checked the box and was registered, or left the box blank and was not registered. And so we're going to do this both for the opt-in and for the yes/no. And so what are we asking? We're asking the subjects to decide what they think the next of kin should do. And what the next of kin knows about the deceased is that they saw either this screen or this screen and either ended up registered or not registered. And we want to know whether asking the question as a yes/no, if the person chooses to not be registered, does the way in which they were asked affect what the subjects say the next of kin should do. So they're asked whether the next of kin should donate the organs and how confident they are in that answer. I'll show you the probability that they say the next of kin should donate the organs. If the deceased was registered, doesn't matter how the question was asked, the subjects in Mechanical Turk say, yes, the next of kin should donate the organs. What about if the next of kin learned that the deceased was not registered? Now, they're much more likely to say, yes, you should donate those organs if the person was not registered because they failed to opt into the question. They're much less likely to say the next of kin should donate the organs if the person who's deceased said, explicitly check the box no about organ donation. We asked this question of Mechanical Turk subjects, both between subjects, we randomized which one they saw, then we showed them the other three. So you might think this is the kind of effect you see in the first choice, but once you show me all the screens, I sort of recognize that saying no here is the same as not saying yes here. But with all four data, if anything, with all four questions, the effect gets stronger. All right, so what do we take away from this? Right, next of kin may be more likely to donate the organs of someone who failed to opt in rather than explicitly said no. So the yes-no frame is not generating more registrations in our study or in California, and it has this potential perverse effect on next of kin. So these two pieces of data together lead us to believe that the jump towards yes-no by lots of these states might be misguided or premature. We want more data to decide.